Hello friends, my name is Alexa and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the first book in the Caraval series called Caraval by Stephanie Garber. If you're new here, I will be going over the summary, which will contain spoilers, so if you wish to avoid spoilers, I will leave a little timestamp in the description if you want to skip to that part where I give my review and rating of this book. With that said, let's get started to the summary. Alright, well, finally, in the year 57, Legend responds to Scarlet after she writes him that she is getting married. However, she continuously wrote to Legend to try to get to participate in the Caraval games, but I guess now, and he decides to respond because he never responded to any of her other letters, so I guess now is the perfect time to respond when someone says I'm getting married, and yeah. Then Scarlet caught Donatella, but Scarlet calls her Tella as a little nickname for her sister, being fondled by a man named Julian. And so Scarlet tells Tella about Legend finally responding to her. However, it'll take at least 3 days to get to where Caraval is being held, but that is the same amount of days, or I guess 3 days is impossible because Scarlet will be getting married I think it was in 3 days time, or somewhere in between the 3 days that she's gonna get married to the count named Nicholas. And then their father catches them speaking to some man, and he beats Tella, and because Tella decided to take the punishment that was meant for Scarlet, even though Scarlet wanted to be the one to do it, because of course, as the eldest sister or brother, you always, if you have a good relationship with your siblings, you always want to try to protect them. I said that the father was a piece of shit, and which he is, because what the hell is wrong with you? Why can't you be a whimsy father instead of one that's always rude to abusive? I feel like I read a lot of books that have abusive fathers, not enough whimsy ones. Maybe I need to read more whimsical stories about nice dads who aren't piece of shits to their sons or daughters, you know what I mean? After all of that, Julian offered to take them to Caraval for free. As Scarlet went to go to the beach because I think she found out that Tella faked a kidnapping, and so Scarlet was trying to get her sister back, otherwise they would be punished severely by their father, because even though if they can't escape, he can find a way to find them again, and yeah. Julian knocked out Scar. Tella was in on it, and Tella wants to protect her. And then there's a little flashback scene with their Nana that told the story about Legend and his lover named Annalise, I believe, but I think it's funny enough that's their grandmother he fell in love with, so, and the whole story came to life, but Nana doesn't tell the story as if Legend is a nice man. She tells it he's a villain, and yes. Crimson is Julian's nickname for Scarlet. I think that was really cute. Tella made it look like they got kidnapped to throw off their father, and Scarlet and Tella's mother left them when they were younger. Tella was already on the island where Carl was being held, and so Julian came back to bring Scarlet over there. However, their boat was sinking, I think. I'm not pretty sure. But they had to swim the rest of the way, but thanks to Scarlet's dress that was freaking heavy, she begins to drown even though she knows how to swim, but and Julian saved her from drowning, and he also cut her corset off to help her swim better, kind of like the whole Elizabeth and Captain Jack Sparrow scene after he saved her from drowning, and he cuts open her corset to help her to breathe, and she like caused open door in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie, not anyway. Then after they wander the cold and snow, they come to this like clock shop, I believe, and they find clothes that were provided by Legend for them to wear. And the owner of the clock shop, I believe, talks to Scarlet, asking her if she wants to use a shortcut to get to Caraval for the price of losing her voice for an hour. Scarlet says no, she wants to stick with Julian all the way. And so, however, Scarlet spotted Tella already at Caraval, and she regretted not making that choice because she could have gotten to her sister quicker. Julian says to Scarlet that he's been a player before, and that Scar and Julian signed their contract to be players in blood. Sunrise is when everything locks up, and so it's kind of like a race to the clock to get to their place where they will be staying during the games. And the sun is like rising. However, Scarlet was the first one to make it in. Julian didn't make it inside, but Scarlet did. So Scarlet was like telling the innkeeper to let him in because she says that he's her fiance. And so Julian manages to get inside, and they get a room, and Julian and Scarlet have to share a bed. Even Scarlet doesn't want to, and so she leaves to go like ask at the front desk if she could get her own separate bedroom. And then that's when the first clue appears, and it's her sister's name, and also I believe her room number. And so Scarlet found her sister's room, and Tella told her not to bother her and to go away because she was with a man or something. Then Scarlet met Dante and his sister Valentina, and he offered her to sleep in his room for the night because I don't know where he was going, or the day, because everybody sleeps during the daytime and then wakes up at night to begin the games. And then she dreamed about Legend pushing her off a balcony, and yes. The first clue was to find Tella, and now Tella is part of the game because she's missing now. Then we find out Tella was taken by Legend, and everybody or whoever finds her within 5 nights will be granted a wish. And so after everybody like ravages and scours Tella's room to find out where she might be, trying to find clues, Scarlet found something that didn't belong to her, which was like a photo, I believe, like a postcard, which turns out to be the second clue. Then as Scarlet and Julian are going to a possible location where they can find a third clue, everything is not as it seems, and that Scarlet sees a woman being dragged out of the shop, and then like the person who is rowing the little I can't remember what it is, but it's like a little boat, like they have in Italy, you know what I mean? I don't remember what it's called, but I know what it is, but I don't know the name. The person rowing the boat brushed it aside as a street performance, and Scarlet's not really having it. She's like, okay. But, and then they get wound up to a little bit of like these different tents that like have stuff in them, like elixirs and weird stuff going on. So Scarlet wanted to find out her future by a tattooed man named Nigel for the price of being questioned. She asked him about the Count instead of her sister, and he told her the Count isn't a good man, and that kind of shattered her world because based on the letters she would get to him, she had this like perspective about him that he was actually nice. And then Nigel basically told her the third clue was to follow the boy with a heart made of black, and so she followed Julian because she thought that is the third clue, or he would lead her to the answer. So she followed him into an underground system under a fountain, and she heard screams, possibly the woman from earlier, and a man, and I guess one of the performers found her down there and like basically told her to leave, and Scarlett like is demanding answers of what's going on. And the performer, I believe, was Jovan, I think, who told her that supposedly they've gone mad or something. And then once Scarlett returns back to the hotel they are staying at, she sees Julian is seriously injured, and so she dresses his wounds, like cleans him up a little, and he's like moaning while she's doing it, so he's a little bit of a freak. He got Scarlett's earrings back, and Julian and Scar almost kiss, and that's like when night 2 begins, I guess. Then after Scarlett has a very interesting conversation with Dante at the bar, who seems like a little rude to her for some reason, even though he was nice the first time they met, that possibly Dante is the man with the black heart. Then she ran into a street vendor guy who had like cider and basically told her, well, drink the cider and you might find your answers. So she drank a cider that turned everything into black and white, except like 2 possible clues, like a man in a top hat and like a person with a journal or something, who are more in color. And Scarlett's like, well, I'm going with the person with the journal. And so she runs into another performer named Aiko, and the price for viewing Aiko's memory journal, she has to purchase 2 dresses in exchange for viewing the journal, and she has to pay for the dresses via greatest fear or desire, or the other option is to pay losing 2 days of her life. She was able to answer, I believe, the first one, and then like the second one, the person wasn't getting the right answers, and so she's like, well, you gotta pay with 2 days of losing your life. And that makes Scarlett panic, and she's like, Aiko tells her to go back to the hotel before she dies, basically. And so Scarlett's desperately trying to get back. However, Dante like stops her as she's almost made it to her bedroom. And that's why Julian then shows up to save Scar from Dante, and he's also pissed off she gave up 2 days of her life. And so once they go back to her room, or their room, because they're both staying together, Julian gives up a day of his life, and only that means only Scarlett gets to die for 1 day, and that he assured her that she will be fine. And then as Scarlett's dreaming about or sees a memory of Aiko's journal, she sees that Dante's fiance Rosa was killed by Legend, and then she sees the top hat, and then she thinks Julian's possibly Legend. And then once the day of death is over, Scarlett wakes up and has a streak of gray in her hair, and she also finds out somehow her father found her at Caraval. Dante's dead, and her father is after her, and she suspects that Julian is the one who killed Dante, even though he says that he didn't do it. Julian swears to her he's not Legend, Dante and Julian are friends, and that I guess apparently Rosa is Julian's sister, maybe? Julian knew that Legend would kidnap either Tella or Scarlett, and that Legend was the one who messed up Scarlett's marriage prospect. I just did a little recap of like what the possible clues were, and I just said the first clue was Donatella, the second clue was the picture card of the Castillo Maldito. I'm pretty sure I pronounced that wrong. Apologies in advance. The third clue is follow the boy with the black heart that equaled the cider, and the fourth clue was losing 2 days of her life or Aiko's dream. Scarlett's real fiance, Nicholas, found her and is apparently working for her father. Scarlett and Julian got chased, and in the midst of all that, Scarlett and Julian finally have their first kiss. Scarlett's father carved up Julian's face as an incentive for Scarlett to never do anything like that again. And then he made a comment saying, "Remember the last time we played this game?" And I'm confused about that. And then I don't know if he like meant it like this happened before, or like he actually played in the games before. I have no idea. Scarlett saved Julian by making the Count tell her father to release him, and even though her father basically said to the Count that he is supposed to, I want to say basically like, sexually assault her, if I'm talking about, like make her and him have sex. And as the Count is like undressing himself, Scarlett threatened him with a fire poker and then splashed the elixir that she bought that was supposed to protect her. It basically like paralyzed him. Then she saved Julian, and so they want to find the fifth clue, and she wants to inspect all the balconies during the daytime, and then apparently the fifth clue was the carousel. And so they spin around to get to some sort of, I guess, the answer that they sought. They found it. And then Scarlett finally meets with the man himself, Legend, and apparently Sheehan finds out Julian is actually a performer and is working for Legend. Then when Julian reunites with Scarlett, Legend stabbed him and killed him, possibly, I don't know. And then Scarlett traveled up all these stairs and she finally found her sister. And then Tella introduced Scarlett to her fiance or lover, and it turns out like Tella calls him Daniel, but is actually really Legend. And Scarlett is freaking out and being gaslit the whole time. And then apparently Legend invited Scar and Tella's piece of shit father along with the Count, and Tella jumped off the balcony to save herself and her sister. And then once that was finished and the game is over, her father tries to hit Jovan, and so that's why Scarlett and Legend, well actually Legend was one who threatened the Count and her father if he touches one of his performers, then he's gonna do something pretty bad. And Scarlett came to the defense of Jovan and like yelled at her father not to fucking touch her. Which in turn, Scarlett is now finally free from her father, and I like Jovan. I thought she was pretty cool. Then there's this little letter that she finds out because Jovan's like, well, you might want to go back up to where Tella was, because Scarlett is saying her goodbyes to her sister who's lying dead on the ground, who is now dead. So Scarlett travels back up to the bedroom or the room where Tella was, and she found out Legend and her were working together, and that Scarlett wants to meet Legend. Then we also find out that Legend is not really Legend, that he is an actor/performer named Caspar. However, Legend is real and Scar could have already met him. And I said, why do I get the feeling that she already did? Then we find out that now the games are over, Tella is actually alive, and that it was all part of the game, and that Tella and Legend like kind of made a bargain together, and Tella told Scarlett that Julian is alive and so is Dante, and that there's going to be a party for completing the game. Then at the party, Scarlett kind of talks with Julian, and he just calls her by her first name, and she's like, why are you calling me by that name? I like Crimson better. And so Julian then tells Scarlet that he is related to Legend, that he is his brother, and that Scarlet, and then I guess Scarlet views people in colors, and also she views feelings in colors. I thought that was pretty cool. And then Scarlet forgave Julian after all of that, and they kissed for real. And I guess while Tella was dancing, she ran into possibly Legend, and because she got a freaking letter in her hand that said that somebody is coming to collect. That's all that happened in Caraval, a 5 stars. I really enjoyed this book, and I liked how it kind of messed with you while you were reading it, kind of like how you were also getting messed with, or like how it kind of draws you into like playing the game too, and I thought that was really enjoyable to me. I love the dynamic between Scar and Tella. I love how you can tell that they're totally totally different from each other, how Scarlet's more extroverted, I would say, and Scarlet's more an introvert. Like I think I love more equally, but I feel like I'm more Scarlet. I love Julian's little nickname for Scarlet. I think they're cute together, and let's see. I loved how it kind of felt like you were I like how the mystery elements of it. And yeah, I also liked how Scarlet might have met Legend already, but I have my suspicions of who it might be, but I know that it's obviously, I don't think it's gonna be Julian, but anyway, I think that's it for now. Let me know what you guys thought of Caraval. What character did you like? And next time, I believe I will talk about the second book in the Caraval series, Legendary, or called Legendary. And yes, if you like this video, please leave a like. If you want to see more from me, please subscribe, and hopefully by the next video I'll actually be able to talk and get my thoughts in order. But yes, and until next time, bye friends.